and welcome back to our channel. Today we'll be tackling Unit 7, 8 and 9, which looks at the speaking skills and how we teach them. Remember that this is for the module TMN3701, which is Teaching English First Additional Language in the Intermediate Phase. So we'll go through a little bit of an introduction, then we'll look at the effective teaching of speaking. We'll look at speaking activities you can do with learners, initiating and sustaining conversations in the classroom. Then we'll also go on to look at nonverbal communication, then the framework for the speaking process, which includes prepared and unprepared speeches. Then we will look at lastly at tolerating errors, and then also our questions that you will engage with on the forum. So let's begin. Right, so please remember that Unit 7, 8, and 9 all looks at teaching, but Unit 7, teaching speaking, but Unit 7 looks at the different forms of oral communication, communication for purpose, social purposes, which is in Unit 8, and in Unit 9 looks at the framework of prepared and unprepared short talks. So I've put this all together in one presentation because they all kind of relate and speak to one another. All right, so the effective teaching of speaking. Okay, understand the learner's interests by. Okay, so as a teacher, you also need to, get some background information about what children are looking at and what they are interested in. So watch a children's program on TV. There's many channels that you can indulge yourself with. You can also go to rugby, netball, or soccer game and see what, what sports they like. Then visit toy shops to see what themes are trending. Look out also for the latest books children are reading, and then, of course, listen to the music that they are listening to. This is a good way to kind of, engage in discussion with topics that they are interested in. Right, so carrying on, notion and functions, this is important. So notion refers to situations in which one communicates, and the function refers to what one wants to do with the language, okay? So we use the functional notation approach in first additional language by creating everyday situations in the classroom. So, for example, you will create these opportunities for children to do some shopping, disagree about something, apologize, being surprised, and asking for a favor. Okay, so you can see there, those are the different situations, but then also we are also using different language in each situation. So, for example, the language that you will use when you are at a shop will not be the same language you would be using when you're asking a friend for a favor. Okay, so just take in consideration the notion and the function and how they work together. All right, some speaking activities that you can do in your classroom. Please remember you can obviously be creative and go beyond these, okay? So the first one is obviously engaging in conversations with your children about, promote weekend news in the classroom. You don't really need to write it down. They can have an opportunity to share their weekend news or their holiday news, or, if they have any special news. Also, they can bring and share to the classroom. So they bring an object to the classroom, and then they, give a little bit of a unprepared speech to the class about their object. Then giving directions or instructions. You can also create opportunities for role play and storytelling. Children can also retell stories. Okay, and then also you can create your own role card. So yeah, where you write something on a card and a child needs to, act it out. So for example, if you on the card could write roaring like a lion, then the child could act that out. Okay, then language games. So you can Google and research some language games that you can use in terms of speaking. And then also they can practice some short poems and rhymes, and then again presenting own work. So again, remember with speaking, it's something that's not taught in isolation, and you can use these speaking activities within your reading or your listening or your writing activities. All right, so here we are going to speak about the initiating of conversation in the classroom and why it's important, okay? So, conversation is a social construct, and one needs to know how to start and sustain a conversation, okay? You can teach learners several ways in which they can initiate conversation, either with their friends, on the bus, in the classroom, wherever they may be. Okay, so you could first start off with an introduction of oneself in the classroom, then ask the children to ask about the person's well-being, so asking how you are, talk about news and recent events, and then show concern for an interest in the person. So this is what you're going to practice in the classroom, so that when children are, exposed to a situation where they need to sustain a conversation, they've had some practice with you in the classroom. All right, carrying on this topic, it is turn taking conversation. So, learners should be taught that it is important to listen to others and it is rude to interrupt an individual. Okay, use a ball or any object, and whoever has the ball or the object is the speaker, and the others are the listeners. Okay, the ball is passed around so that everyone has a turn to share their thoughts. This is very nice to do maybe in the morning when you are checking in with your learners. You can give them the opportunity to hold an object and maybe share something about the day before, and then they pass it on to one another. You can also have a little bit of a quiz, and you can see who remembers or who was listening carefully during the conversation. Okay, so ask questions. So ask direct questions, use conjunctions, allow learners to form longer sentences, so phrases, so different notation and function. Okay, then you can also teach them fillers for pauses and, of course, fluency. Get the message across, even if it is not perfect. So, these are things that you can work on during these conversation practices in the classroom. All right, so nonverbal communication is also important because sometimes when we are receiving a message, we don't need to maybe respond in that second, but we use our body language to, nod or in agreement with someone, or, a specific body language or facial expression and so forth. So nonverbal communication is very important as it can expand the learner's understanding of the total range of message sending. In this process, the learners will be able to increase their effectiveness as communicators and as interpreters of this important kind of communication. Okay, so you need to, teach children about body language, facial expressions, tone of voice. It's also nice to relate the body language and the facial expressions to each other, because obviously, if they are speaking to a friend who's sad, they're not going to be smiling. Okay, and if they speak into a friend that is, excited about something, they're not going to have an angry facial expression, for example. So you need to just, tell children that how you are speaking or how you're receiving a message, your body and your face and your overall well-being also needs to communicate with that. All right, so the framework for prepared and unprepared short talks, these are, quite important because it allows children to have the opportunity to speak in English and also for them to prepare a speech or an unprepared speech on something that they are excited about. So the first step of the process is selecting a topic. Okay, it is important to obviously select a topic that's interesting to your learners. If you are maybe teaching a group of learners who have no interest in sport, and you choose sport as the teacher, it's going to be a difficult task for everyone involved. Okay, so it's great to always maybe, put a few examples on the board, and as a class come up with a, maybe do a voting system or drawing from the hat and see what you could um, select as a topic. Okay, so you have given some examples. So you could do sport, favorite movie or TV show, local hero, pet, favorite music, or the best day in my life. So these are just some simple examples. There are many other topics that you can select from. So it is important that it's something that your learners are, of course, interested in. Also, take note that it is a short speech, so it's not something that's going to be over 5 minutes. It might be a minute or two, just for learners to get the experience of what it takes to do a speech in front of a group of people. All right, so the pre-speaking activities include, so you need to obviously, with your learners, ask the following questions. Who's going to listen to the speech? So who is the target group? What kind of speech do I have to prepare? And what do I want to achieve? So you as the teacher need to set up these expectations with your learners so that when they are going into the process, they are aware of the expectations. Okay? It is also important to include some vocabulary exercises. So select the vocab for the topic given to the learners and ask learners to suggest words in their home language and look up the English words in the dictionary. So this is also an opportunity to expand their vocabulary and for them to be exposed to new words in English. Okay, so that's also a good opportunity to do before they start preparing their speech. Okay, so when you are looking at the structure of the speech, you're obviously going to tell the learners that it has a head, body, and tail, almost like an animal, whereas the head is the introduction, the body is all the juicy bits of the speech, and the tail is the conclusion. Okay, all the parts are connected of the speech and obviously need to relate to one another. In that way, you can also help them by brainstorming ideas, which you can come up with buzz groups, think of words and ideas around the topic, encourage creative thinking, encourage also active participation. All ideas should be written down, bold on and add on ideas. Words not suitable to the topic can also be removed, and then related words are then categorized and sorted in terms of where we are going to be putting these words, and then you can start, sorting it into beginning, middle, and end for the speech. Okay, then obviously you need to start organizing your material coherently. So keeping in mind that speech has the beginning, the middle, and the end. So you need to assist the learners in sorting their material in a certain way so that it does make sense and it is coherent. Okay, you can also draw a mind map and help them to sort certain ideas for the beginning, certain ideas for the middle, and certain ideas for the end. All right, so the speaking stage, which is then when they're going to present their speech to the class or to you as the teacher, you need to, encourage them to speak enthusiastically, give them some tips on eye content, the structure, the appropriate tone of voice. And of course, they need to also ensure that they have the latest information in their speech. Okay, so if they're doing a speech on about the environment, it's important that they do have the latest information. Okay, you can also encourage them to provide some visuals or some audio visual aids, for example, a short video or some pictures. Okay, so learners should not be encouraged to read off a PowerPoint slide. So it's important that they actually practice the speech and know the speech off by heart to a certain degree, so that the whole speech is not written on a PowerPoint. Okay, this tool, meaning the PowerPoint, should be used to enhance the presentation and should not just be the speech written on the slides and they're reading off the board. Okay, and then of course less is more. You can also provide students with some examples of speeches and also maybe present a speech to them and show them how it should be done. Okay, you can also help them with preparing their cue cards and maybe have a few lessons dedicated to practicing how they are going to be delivering their speech. All right, the post-speaking phase, which is also quite important, okay? Recordings can be used successfully whereby learners can analyze their progress by listening to recordings of their speech, okay? It's important to also provide learners with positive feedback, give them a self-evaluation where they can see, okay, I think I need to read my speech a little bit slower, or I think I need to speed it up, or I think I should have less pictures next time. Okay, so there you can, with your learners, you can plan for improvement so that their next speech is their better speech. So, unprepared short talks, yeah, you can ask children to speak spontaneously, require language proficiency and presence of mind, model an unprepared speech to learners to build their confidence, and encourage learners and motivate them. All right, the unprepared short talk. So these are also very important. And you can have as a practice round just a brief discussion on um, how to demonstrate a short talk or a unprepared short talk. Okay, so give your learners the following guidelines when they have to do an unprepared speech. Define the topic, give them examples, mention one or more characteristic of the topic, say why it is good, bad, or important. Okay, so for example, if you are doing an unprepared speech on global warming, you will obviously define what is global warming, show them some examples, mention one or more characteristic of the topic. So, for example, cars give off fumes that affect the ozone layer, and that's global warming. Okay, and then of course, why it is good, bad, or important. It's obviously important because the earth is becoming a lot more hotter than it was before. Okay, buy yourself time by using expressions too. So you can give them, little examples of how to introduce the topic. So, for example, my topic today is I'd like to begin by, okay? Keep people interested by saying things like, what is interesting about this is, I think the audience would be interested to know that, okay? Give illustrations. So, for instance, a good example of this is, emphasizing things like an important thing about this is, or let me emphasize that, and then in the end concluding, in the end, I'd like to end by, and in conclusion. Okay, so it's important that you go through these different phrases or expressions with your learners so that in between their different facts they can slot in these little sayings which elevates their talk, okay? And then use good pronunciation when demonstrating this to learners. All right, tolerating errors. So, the human mind is designed to learn language, and good teachers avoid what interferes with this process. Okay? Avoid anything that causes fear, anxiety, and stress in learners. So, you may come across a learner who absolutely dreads speeches and speaking in public and speaking to anyone. For learners like that, you could maybe get them to present their speech to you in a private setting where there's no other learners around. You can also maybe help support the child by preparing the speech and helping them practice in between so that when it does come to the big main event, they are feeling a little bit more comfortable and less anxious or stressful. Okay, it is counterproductive to focus and highlight a learner's errors. Okay, so please try to reward your learners during this process. Successful modern approach to language learning emphasizes that language games and other language learning activities to reduce tension, and it allows learners the freedom to experiment with different ways of expressing meaning. So, for example, encouraging pair work. So learners can engage with their peers and feel a bit more comfortable when they present or speak or engage with others. All right, the questions that will be on the forum for these units, it would be, what are the guidelines on teaching speaking given in CAPS? How will you ensure that learners get the opportunity to converse with one another in the target language, being English? What does learners learn when they are required to retell stories? Discuss different ways in which you can create role play activities in your classroom. What language games would you let learners play? Give some examples. Make a list of 5 topics on which you think learners would like to do a short prepared talk on. How would you assist the learners in preparing for their short talk? What relaxing exercises would you teach the learners to do before they present a prepared or unprepared talk? And how would you treat the learners' errors when they are speaking?